Hi there, it's Polly here with our old pal Mr. Snoots, yay! And we're going to take a little look into the dim, dark murk of time at the start of role-playing games. The Morrow Project. Now, the Morrow Project is a post-apocalypse role-playing game that was written and published in 1980. Now, it's not the first post-apocalypse game. Good old Gamma World had been out for a few years and was a rip-snorter of a game. But Gamma World is very much a science fiction fantasy piece. First edition Gamma World revelled in wonderfully silly mutations. You could have mutant animals as characters and mutant humans, laser beam eyes, teleporting, all kinds of fun, crazy mutations. And you're exploring a futuristic science fiction world as either a primitive human or as some of these mutants. So there was lots of high tech that you didn't really understand how it worked. Ending up in endless hilarity as, player characters seized on staple guns or, some kind of medical injector unit deciding it was a black ray pistol and then going out to, fight a horde of mutant cassowaries, sure in the knowledge that they now had the tech. So the Morrow Project is far more science-based. Far more science-based. It is, in fact, coming from that period where kind of the very first generation role-playing games just wanted the kludgiest, funkiest system, D&D, and by that stage basic and advanced would have been out, which are still primitive systems really. These guys wanted science, and I was guilty of doing this myself, so cheers to the designers. They wanted a more kind of hard-bitten science fiction environment for this setting. So what they did was, now a little bit bafflingly, given the fact they're trying to be really straight shooting on the science, was they've said that a guy, Morrow, Bruce Morrow? Yes, Bruce Edward Morrow, set up the Morrow Project, and he set this thing up in the 60s, where the idea is they developed cryogenic chambers and they were going to freeze volunteers there whose job would be to rebuild American civilization. Sidebar. Why? After a nuclear holocaust. So these guys were put in underground bunkers in deep freeze with equipment that they would need in order to complete their mission coming out. Now, the weird thing about this is that they've decided that, Morrow could apparently somehow see into the future or could travel into the future, and so had seen actual results, etc., etc. And so he was coming back with all kinds of wisdom, and indeed he came back with some little widgets to help out, little fusion generators and things. I'm not sure why, but that's their setting. So these started in the 60s, where volunteers from the 60s are frozen down there with 1960s equipment. And then in 1987, they did a reissue of equipment. They plunged in there and put better weapons, more updated equipment, and so forth. Now, they didn't want one giant single bunker or mega bunkers with these recovery teams in them, because a nuclear strike could take out an entire bunker. So essentially a bunker is one team, pretty much a group of player characters and some support, and they have specific missions, and you have different sort of Morrow teams. And the idea was a computer would give a signal sort of after immediate fall, or after fallout has dissipated, and these teams are supposed to go out and help with medical and recovery for people, and also sort of help re-establish farmland and help fix what is broken and restore order, and red, white and blue shall continue waving and whatever. But it seems that things went awry. So in this scenario, Armageddon happens on November 18th, 1989. That is when nuclear war starts, folks. And it was a The Americans launched first. There was a computer glitch. They thought they'd seen a massive Russian launch, so they fired what to them was a retaliation strike. And no, it's just a glitch. So the Americans actually, scooted things off, and the Russians replied in kind. So, Vlad, boom, boom, boom. This is where the science and so on actually comes in. This is kind of a very interesting piece of game design. So, first off, this game is written in 1980, and the guy's taken a guess at what kind of fab equipment's going to be available in 1987 to bear down with these guys. So, there's a lot of sort of up-to-date for 1980 firearms. So, you've got M16s, and you've got the stuff that was beloved of the era. You got your MAC-10 Ingrams and all this kind of things, and you've got your 44 Magnums, and you've got your Laws rockets and your M60s. American, of course, and they have, however, added in some extra stuff. Because as we all know, back in 1987, some things like primitive lasers and so on were developed. So yes, there are some funky, crazy weapons in there as well. And the vehicles are largely made completely up. They are specialty vehicles made for surviving the Holocaust. So often they are radiation proofed and so on. So, to create a character, interestingly enough, there are no skills. There are only attributes. Those attributes include, intelligence and constitution and physical strength. They also include things like accuracy. They are designed kind of wackily for a 0 to 20 value. You roll 4d6 and subtract 4 from the value for each of these characteristics. So if miraculously you rolled 4 6s, okay, you would have a 20. So you can tell the average is going to be what, 6, 8, 14 minus 4 is 10. The average characteristic will be 10. When you are trying to do something, you are rolling against the appropriate characteristic and you're trying to get under the characteristic value. So if you had a average Joe Smo accuracy of 10, you would be looking for a 9 or less to hit. So that's how it's done. But there are no skills. There's just characteristics. So, okay. You also work out a few rather complex factors. You work out the person's body points, which is a factor multiplied by their constitution. Equal to their body points are their blood points, because bleeding out is a big thing here. This game was really big on medical accuracy, as well as trying to get its scientific accuracy down. You also have an endurance, which is figured out from your constitution. Now, obviously you can have an umpire who will set up particular types of teams that you will be. They say each character should be given a job, so I guess this is what the skill is. If for some reason this involved, like, I know, piloting an ultralight aircraft, whoever's the pilot can do that. Or if this guy's the medic, all right, obviously he can do medic things. If this guy's the mechanic, all right, well, if there's any vehicles you got break, I guess he can fix them. But none of it gives you any bonuses on, shooting or spotting or, doing first aid on your pal that just got bitten by a mutant crocodile. So, okay. It's a strange take for something. I find the lack of skill for characters a strange take, given that this is a game that goes into so much scientific detail about other things. But anyway, so you are going to be starting the game as a team of some sort. They say if you have a team where you've decided to, like, there are Mars teams, combat teams that are just there to, bash the Bosch and hammer the Hun. Because, of course, dirty commies might have been crawling all over the place. Or it could be these practical teams. Player characters get a job. They do suggest that there are some jobs which might be a little bit unglamorous, like being a driver or whatever. It says they might spend a lot of time sitting in a vehicle, so they suggest that maybe those players want to play more than one character. Or maybe each player wants to have more than one character. Okay. The glitch in the system is that the Morrow teams were not woken up. essentially there was a fault in the system, probably caused by an EMP or by a computer virus attack, and they slept through the Holocaust and they slept through the immediate recovery period that they were supposed to help with. They are starting to come awake now, 150 years later, after the bombs have dropped. So they're coming up into a very different world to the one expected. And of course, this is all going to be a surprise to them, because the information they've got is that it was envisioned that this war was obviously going to take place before 1990. So it's like, well, you know, you're going to be, it might be the year 2000 when you guys come out, and it might be like 20 years after the, or 10 years or 5 years after the Big Bang. All right, fair enough. So, you know, surprise. So, yeah, equipment. So each type of team that has different equipment that it gets, it is very specific on what sort of vehicles the different types of teams will be given, what kind of tools, what sort of weapons. Now, there may well be other Morrow bunkers around, and obviously an umpire is going to figure out where they are in their campaign, and that might include some sort of hidden underground supply bunkers. But although you've got your MAC-10s and you know, your M60s, that's fantastic. But remember, the ammo you've got in the bunker is, you know, that's all you've got. There's no magic gun store out there that's going to somehow sell you replacements. So yeah, sure, brass things up as much as you want, but you're going to be out here for a very long time. So actually creating a character and team is pretty damn simple. You've got these I think five characteristics, 46 minus 4 for each of them, and just the umpire's going to tell you what your job is, and here's your pile of equipment, folks. Choose what you want. Okay, fine. You also obviously have to choose sort of when your character was frozen, so there may be things that you do or don't know. So if you've been frozen in 1962, you guys are going to be a little bit more clean cut. You know nothing of these hippies or free love, nor do you know anything of like Vietnam Wars or you know, or what have you. Those Beatles are hip, Daddy-o. But yeah, so you know, you got some fun with that. So the system is very, very, very intense on, say, combat. When you're in combat, so first off, you have an endurance rating. When you're in combat, whether you are actively attacking or not, you lose an endurance point every single turn of combat. If your endurance runs out, then you roll 1d4, and at the end of that number of turns, your dexterity drops to 0. Your other characteristics, I think they also bottom out at 0. You are exhausted, but you do get a warning that you're about to become exhausted. You know, in 3 turns I will be exhausted. So, you know, there is an endurance factor to bear in mind when combats begin. You can rest and get endurance back. You can take stimulants and get endurance back. The stimulants have rules for taking the stimulants, how much they give you back, but they charge you extra. So if you get 40 points back from a stimulant, when the stimulant wears off, you will lose like 60 points rather than just the 40 that this artificially provided. So it can crash you down bad. And if you take multiple stimulants, it multiplies. So it's like, yeah, you know, taking pep pills all day and you know, jamming heroin into the back of your own skull is might be a great short-term survival strategy, but yeah, bad idea. You are rolling that d20 against accuracy in order to hit. There's a initiative system, comes off dexterity, and there are modifiers to the roll. Depending on the weapon that you've got, it will give you different modifiers for different range bands. Everything's split into sort of short, medium, long bands. So, you know, short's out to about, actually close is out to, I think, 20. And then they've got a short range out to about 50, a medium range out to about 150, and then 300 is long range, extreme, extra extreme, etc. So you get bonuses for if you've taken extra time to aim, if you're firing short bursts. You get penalties, I think, if you're firing long bursts, unless of course it's a bipod or tripod weapon and these sorts of things. There also, the things go extensively into grenade launchers, mortars, Law's rockets, those strange little man-pack rockets which were running around in the 80s for a while. Yeah, a whole bunch of sport equipment. So, now, when you hit someone, and here's where it starts getting funky. When you hit someone, there is a D100 hit location system. So, you know, from snout to tail, ladies, it is, the human body is divided up. Now, each of these can only take a certain proportion of your overall body value in damage. But if they take damage that takes that section to 0, then that section is functionally destroyed. If it loses, I think, half its value, then you halve any abilities or characteristic checks that are associated with it. So if your arm gets sort of half its points taken away, then if you were trying to fight someone, okay, you're getting a negative on the roll. You're halving your base characteristic to do that. But here's the thing: you have to check for immediate death. If the character is hit in locations that you need, so if you're hit in the head, if you're hit in the torso, if you're hit in the groin, if you're hit sort of in the upper thigh femoral areas and so on, there is a percentage roll that you make. You have to check on this percentage thing to see if you just plain and simple die. Bang, shot in the head, your character dies. That's it. If the character doesn't die, there is a chance of the character going into shock. That comes from the percentage of body damage that they've received versus what they can do. So, if you've got 100 body points and you've just lost 23 points from it, there's a little thing you look at and say, oh, that's a major injury, this is a minor injury, So you have to roll to see if you go into a shock. If you go into shock, effectively, your endurance disappears. You have those effects, and you can try and sort of rest and recover, but you are frozen out for quite a few turns. You are down. It's probably going to take stimulants to get you up, and then they're going to have to rest you so that you get back the points you would have lost from the stimulant, etc., etc., etc. There's blood loss. You have blood loss equal to the hit points value that you lost, and you lose that every damn turn. And if your blood reaches 0, you are dead, my friend. The only way to stop that is through some sort of aid. You can do it on yourself, but that gives you a negative on the roll, or someone else can try and bind a wound. Something on a limb is simple. Something on the torso or something is actually very hard. So yeah, you can just bleed out by taking multiple bullet strikes to the torso, as you actually can. So part of character generations, they got little charts of figuring out what your blood type is, because medics might be doing blood transfusions to get people back on their feet, because the percentage of blood loss that you've taken also affects your endurance and characteristics. If you've lost a set amount of blood, all those characteristics are halved. So if you're a character that's hey, like me, is O negative, the universal donor, congratulations, they're going to be tapping you all the time. Armor, what they've done is they've given armor values to things, but there's a considerable chart. Remember, science was in the head of this creator. So they've got the protective equivalents of different types of material via thickness. So this much ceramic, this much aluminium, this much mild steel, this much face hardened steel, this much hard steel, this much ceramic composites, leather, etc., of different thicknesses equals these protective values. And then next to it, sewn in amongst there are typical protections. So this is a brick wall, this is a wooden fence, this is a small sapling, this is a Kevlar vest, this is a this is a metal helmet. This is a Kevlar helmet. So they've got those kind of protections in there, pre-worked out for you. And effectively, each weapon has a energy. You subtract the armor from the energy. If there's any energy left over, that is the damage that you take. So if you've got like a 20-point vest and you're hit by something that's got 25 energy, you will take 5 points. So, you know, in essence, a simple system, but very, very, very thorough. Melee is done much the same way, where they've got strike energy and so on for the weapons, but your strength comes into play there, obviously. And because this is science, it's the energy of the weapons tends to be your strength with a multiplier for the weapon. So, you know, a giant guy with a two-handed axe is actually, you know, dangerous. But on the other hand, given that chance of instant death and given the bleeding, yeah, a little guy with a knife is also frighteningly dangerous, unlike many other things, because if this guy runs up and, you know, stabs you multiple times on the torso and runs off, you're losing blood every shit. You're going after him and bleeding out, or you're going to stay here and hope your friends can stop this. Like I said, the realism's kind of, it's actually sort of refreshing. When you hit someone with automatic weapons, you roll to see how many bullets hit them, which is usually a separate dice roll, usually like about, you know, for a lot of weapons it's 1d4, although if you're firing like a M60 or something at someone, you know, I think it's a d6 or even a d8 bullets, so you can, you know, really chew people to pieces. And shotguns, wackily enough, the damage they've given for shotguns are for individual pellets within a basically a double-load buckshot round. So you roll for the number of pellets that hit someone, and they get less and less pellets hitting them the further out the range is. And God help us, if you're firing a fully automatic shotgun, it's like, all right, so hang on, I've got 1 to 4 bullets, all right, I've hit with 4 bullets worth of pellets, and now for each of those things I've got to randomise how many pellets for each of those. So I've hit him with 4, and one of those is 4 pellets, one of those is 3 pellets, one of those is 4 pellets. So it scatters a lot of damage all over someone. So like, all right, a niggling way of doing it, but again, you can see the realism is the thing. Travel and so on, and stress and not sleeping, having crap food, all these things actually drain endurance off you. You have to gain endurance back by sleeping and camping. They've got all these different rates there for what the recovery rates are. Basically, if you're nice and comfy back in the bunker, things are great. If you're camping out in the wilderness, the tent got carried away, you know, by a mutant crocodile, and you know, you guys are getting rained on. You're not getting much back. The vehicles that you've got, they are all made up in great detail about what sort of fuel they consume, and some of these are actually have little power units, so you don't have to worry about refueling them, etc. But yeah, some of these are little camper van things that you can stay in. So now, setting-wise, what I liked about this one is you generate the setting. So what they've got is this huge list of every goddamn city and major town in the USA and what hit it in the war. So there's a whole list of different Soviet warhead types and missile types, and it'll tell you, Des Moines, Iowa, what hit that? And it will tell you if it was a airburst or ground burst, tells you if it was, some of them are duds, some of them duds, but you know, the cases cracked or the things come to pieces. Some of them are just non-operable and have, you know, buried themselves in the ground. Some of the MIRVs, they've got different overlapping patterns for how MIRVs land, because they actually do. They're not designed to scatter crazily. So 3 MIRVs, the idea is the total kill zones generally overlap. So if you've got 3 MIRVs, you usually have them in a little pyramid. If you've got 7, they're in an even crazier pyramid. So that's the plan, but those can drift out a bit. It's got what the RADs were that are put on the area. It's got the areas of complete destruction and massive destruction, major destruction, fires, and what direction the wind was going at the time. So it's in great detail as you go. Oh, so an SS7 warheads landed in Des Moines, Iowa. Diddly. And so that tells you what the devastation was. Some of them are bio-warfare warheads, so some of these areas are still contaminated. There's a chart to roll on to see what has happened in the intervening time to biological agents. Have they remained in effect? Did they burn out? Did they mutate? Did they spread outside of the area? So you generate all of that. They've also got rules for, as you lay out the map, said there were also random missiles because radiation and different bursts and so on put their guidance systems off. So there were a bunch of missiles that were essentially just flung at the enemy, scattershot in the hope of doing some damage on later strikes. So they said in any section of map, they said just divide. If you've got a region you're wanting people to explore, and they suggest a square mile area around your bunker and everything, just do an XY rolling. Divide it into like 10 major sectors, and roll 10 across and 10 down to see where a warhead lands. You can roll on these charts to see what kind of warhead it was. Was it an air burst? Was it a ground burst? Was it a dud? Was it a bioweapon, etc.? This is where it ended up, and then within that grid, you divide that into a subgrid and to find exactly where it went. And if it was a MIRV, then multiple warheads go wandering all over the place. So it might have nuked what was once Magnificent National Park. It might have nuked a stretch of highway. And they've got a bunch of examples there where they have essentially randomly generated the Holocaust for, I'm guessing, the designer's home state, because it's pretty specific about blowing up a couple of diners that he obviously didn't like very much. So actually, as a little model for creating a nuclear holocaust, this is brilliant. And those little random rules are good. You can apply this anywhere. Right, like, hey, I live in Perth. Let's nuke Melbourne. Fantastic. Well, Melbourne. Well, look, I'm going to say they're going to probably fling a MIRV warhead at Melbourne. They're also going to fling a separate missile actually at the port facilities and the naval facilities, hoping of getting them. And they're also going to fling a couple at the nearby towns of like Bendigo and Ballarat and Geelong, because those are industrial centres. And there's also a major airbase. So yeah, they're going to make sure one of the MIRV sections lands on that. That's the plan. Roll for variance, roll for where they are. Did that? Oh shit, that one didn't go off. That one wandered. That one's a dud. Okay. Okay, it does this, and the weather pattern was this, so the fallout went here. And you actually get patterns of how many rads are there during the actual explosions and so on, and in the immediate aftermath. And then they show 150 years later what are the residual rads in these different areas, because there's another thing. As you absorb radiation, it does appalling things to you, and they've got considerable medical charts here on as you reach certain levels of rad absorption, what starts to happen to you. Gums are bleeding, skin lesions, hair starts falling out, vision starts going, gastric, terrible gastric things, and then right at the far end, it's your neural pathways no longer work, and you turn into a tree and explode. But unlike other games, you don't like, well, this is a radiation here, I got a bit of a dose, but now I've gotten away and somehow that's gone. No, you accumulate this over your life. So every time you go into a radiation area, you accumulate rads, and if that starts taking you over these thresholds, you suffer those consequences. So if you took 320 rads and there's a crossover point of like 300, right, they are going to, you go on the effects chart and it might say, right, roll 2 dice, you have a 60% chance of just flat out dying from this. 61? Oh, you narrowly come through. And what's your recovery period? And these recovery periods are months. So you spend 9 months recovering. Your hair falls out. Roll to see if any of that recovers. Nah. It's just all patchy and covered with scabs now. You lost your teeth, by the way. And, okay. But 9 months later, oh, Bradley, I'm ready to shoot things again. But if that character then goes continues adventuring and takes like another 30 reds from somewhere, he's crossed another boundary. Now he's at 350. Go to that. You've got a 65% chance of dying from this. Roll the dice. 60. You died. So yeah, be really careful. So it's a real killer of a game. Threat-wise, so people are obviously a major threat in this because a lot of them have kind of turned horrible and clannish. So there are different kind of survivor groups set up. And they've got a considerable number of those. And I think they've even got some that are like descendants of like your commie paratroop units and what have you. They're trying to keep it pretty straight-laced. They've got animals of all different shapes and sizes because, obviously a angry bear is a thing you can come across in the USA. So that is all there. And then they do have a section on mutant animals. And mutation is more common in areas where there has been fallout of certain levels, essentially. There's that magic band where the mutation birth rate in mammals goes up to about 8 to 12%, but beyond that, everything catches leukemia and dies. So in that magic band, you tend to find all kinds of mutant ones, and of course they have wandered out. But again, they're not things that shoot lasers from their eyes. But what is this? This is an alligator that has evolved up into more of a land predator. So their water sources dried up, but some of their offspring became far more able to roam around on land with longer legs and have gotten quite large. This is a major land predator in this area. Or they have some interesting kind of tree snakes that can launch down on things, and so they do have some pretty colourful mutants there to give it that mutant feeling. Look out, it's a double-headed buffalo. So it is weird and wonderful, and vehicles do shield you from rads, so hanging around the vehicle is important, and they've got other sort of shelters in there. They have an experience system. As you explore and discover things and achieve bits of your team goal, you gain experience, which allows you to spend points to increase your characteristics, because like I said, it's pretty simple character creation there. And obviously the game's going to kind of build itself. Where are the other bunkers? Who survived? Is there someone generally in command here? Or are we all on our own? Do we even bother with these instructions? Well, hang on. The guy that set this up could see into the future. So he knew that us doing this stuff was long-term going to be good. Surely. Wait. He could see into the future. Maybe we were a group that had to be horribly sacrificed in order that someone could do real stuff somewhere. Anyway, you can second guess as much as you like. So look, it was an early post-apocalypse game. The mechanics, the actual dice roll mechanics are pretty damn simple. Roll a d20, try and get under the appropriate characteristic. The body points and being wounded and so on, it looks a bit scary at first because of these masses of data on different types of protection and the energy of different weapons and so on. But fairly simple, really. It's like, what are you firing with? There's its energy. That energy does go down over range. Was it at long range? Yeah. All right. Subtract. At that range, it's lost a quarter of its energy. So good. What armor have you got? Subtract that from the remaining energy. The remainder is hit points. Oh, but oh dear, it's hit him in the groin. Roll to see if you drop dead. So more dice rolling than you would expect from a more modern game design, but and more lethal than you would find in any modern game design. And that is its charm. They've tried to keep it real. This isn't one where you're going to kick indoors with a Mac-10 in each hand blazing away. This isn't something where you're going to somehow, reroute the fusion power generator through Mr. Data's nutsack and somehow, create a field of tachyon beams that... No, you're going to have to do things. You're going to have to find food. You're going to have to find food that's not irradiated. You're going to have to find people and make friends. You're going to have to try and look for supplies, figure out where other bunkers are. It's an irradiated area. How are we getting into that safely? you're going to have to do some hard thinking and solve hard problems. So it is a very, very gritty post-apocalypse game. The layout is execrable. It is a mass of pretty lightly typed things, and it's very hard to see subjects. I had to search through quite carefully to actually find where it told you what dice rolls to do for characteristic values, and so it is a child of its times on that one. The gentle art of page layout was decidedly in its infancy. Is it a playable game? Hell yeah. Is it a fun game? Actually it is. I've played the game. I played it back in the day and have good memories of it. And it's not just because we were tolerant of stupid bloody systems back in those days. It actually is quite fun. It has a level of paranoia to it that you don't find in most post-apocalypse games, because you are a bunch of people with, an armoured camper van and a couple of M16s and a Mac-10 and a junk box full of tools who have been asked to go ye forth and try and figure out what the hell happened here and how do we help fix any of this. So yeah, it's grim compared to the usual game that you would find, but that is its charm. So, it is a gem from 1980. Remember, every November 18th, it is Explosion Day, where we can celebrate the dread Holocaust in 1989. We will never forget. So, anyway, it is a game that you can... It is still out there. I'll put some links. It's worthwhile getting hold of a copy for collectors and so on. It's worth having it. But like I've said in so many cases, these older games are truly worth playing. Each one has its amazing strengths, and each has that different emotional journey that it brings to the table. That's what a role-playing game is about. It is an emotional landscape that generates stories that you're going to be pulled into. The story this one is going to create is a survivalist tale. If you're one of those people that really gets off on thinking about, making your own wind generators, grinding your own grain, and, running around the wilderness with a Barrett 50 cal, then Morrow Project, baby. So anyway, we had fun unearthing this thing again, and we will see you again somewhere, somewhen. Look after yourselves, my friends. Look after your personal safety. Look after your morale. Keep your spirits up. Things will get better, and there's a lot of people working hard to make it so. All right, much love, everybody. You want to turn it off? He's going to turn it off. Okay.